Welcome back to another edition of the Deep Cover Podcast. I'm your host, Omar Zaran. Thank you, as always, for joining me for another edition of the show. A topic that I'm really interested in, and I didn't want to cover by myself. I wanted to have a guest to talk to me about this, was the state of youth basketball and youth sports as a general concept in 2025 in America. It's something that I think a lot of people have thoughts about with AAU culture and travel teams and all this different stuff and how our kids coach now, specialization. It's a big can of worms, just Pandora's box, a lot going on. And when I saw on Instagram that former guest of the pod and good friend of mine, Ryan Rucker, was, really leaning into basketball coaching, I was like, okay, I got to have Ryan on to talk about this and talk about the big picture stuff when it comes to youth sports. So, Ryan, thank you as always for joining me. And I see you wore your Reggie Miller shirt to taunt me a little bit, but
I differ for any video guest. I've got my old school Reggie. I don't know who even has a shirt, but like, yeah, it's his retirement specific shirts with his jersey going up from 2006. This is like one of my favorite Pacer shirts because it's like
yeah.
the one that people see that they go, "Oh, you're like a real fan." I'm like, that's me. But no, man, Omar, it's so good to be here with you. I'm very grateful.
Yeah, I know the last time we talked on here, it was right before the Knicks Pacers series, and
Oh
which
my
was a fun
goodness, it was.
series. Yeah, and then of course it's led to a fun finals run for the Pacers,
Mhm.
ending sadly in 7 games against the Oklahoma City Thunder. But we're not here to talk about that. Maybe at the end of the show we'll talk a little Pacers, a little bit of Indiana Fever. But
I love it.
first, so I want you to kind of introduce your kind of new venture, so to understand, so people can understand why I wanted to have you on here. So you started something called Courtside Coaching, and
Yeah.
I want you to kind of just give us a little bit of a background on that. First, why did you want to start that up, and what exactly is it that you're doing in the coaching side?
Yeah, great question. So, yeah, Courtside Coaching is my personal training business where I work with kids. I would work with adults as well, but mostly with kids on speed, agility training. Just making sure the kids have what they need from, yeah, just from that kind of background. I have a big background in athletics. And so I essentially wanted to impart some of that the wisdom, some of like those tips, tricks, all these different things into their game. I do basketball training as well, so that's part of courtside coaching. Courtside is very much like a basketball thing, but it's
Mhm.
funny because courtside actually it came from a couple different people. But years ago, I heard Hassan Minaj refer to parenting as like having the best seats in the house, which is in reference to Spike Lee and being there and available for everything and seeing it all, and not necessarily being able to impact what is going on the court, but you see it. You have the best seats in the house. So I've used that courtside front row analogy for everything related to parenting. And then, a couple years ago, I started my podcast, Courtside Forever, which is very much about parenting from a sports angle. And, I wanted to get into more personal training, more basketball training. And, so I was like, oh, what can I name it? I was like, Courtside Coaching. Like, so it's not solely basketball, but it's like, my goal is to help you get to where you need it. I'm here. I'm here to support you, but it's your world. It is your world. Like I'm here to support, guide, but like if you have an amazing game, I didn't do that. You did that. And I'm just cheering you on this entire way. So yeah, it's been fun. And essentially it was born out of the fact that professionally I've been in HR forever and HR is just a nightmare field right now. And quite frankly, I never loved it. It was just kind of like I kind of got thrown into it and I was good at it. I was like, but then you get laid off a couple times and you deal with instability. I'm like, "What am I doing?" Like, I don't even particularly enjoy this kinda stuff. Um, and yeah, last year, I ended up winning, 2024 Coach of the Year in my city, which was, like, really cool just because 'cause I've been coaching basketball for a little while, and getting that award was awesome, and then, like, 2 weeks later, I got a call from my high school alma mater, inducting me into their athletics hall of fame for
Wow.
coaching and for, my, journey as an athlete. I went to the state meet for triple jump, in high school. So, like, all these things were leading more towards athletics, leading towards a change. So I just really went in, got my personal training certification, and am now working with a bunch of kids, a couple adults, and I love it, man. It's the best. It is the best.
Well, you always love to hear somebody pursuing a passion, right?
Yes.
I feel like now a lot of people they're having this kind of a crossroads moment where they're just kind of like It's like, all right, this is kind of happening. What am I doing here? Let me follow a dream, and I think that's incredible to hear. And yeah, you on your podcast, I remember before I had you on the first time, I kind of was binging through a bunch of the episodes, and I was like, yeah, it's not really a conversation you see a lot in the sense of like the parenting aspect of it all. Like a lot of times now, we're kind of looking at recruits um, and players before they're in college. I mean, you think about, for example, with when Paige Beckers won WNBA Rookie of the Year, an old tweet surface of this guy who was like who saw her in sixth grade and
That's
identified
great.
her talent. You know, that guy's probably taken. He's undefeated on Twitter for the rest of his life.
For
But
sure.
but yeah, it's like we look at it from a pro lens and what can this player become? And you think it's gone further and further in where we're looking at high school freshmen and you think about it like you're just a kid, right? And I always thought that you brought a conversation that focused on the fact that they're just kids,
Mhm.
still, right?
Yes.
They have
Yes.
tremendous athletic ability, tremendous potential, but they are still kids, right?
Mhm.
And so that's a great focus on. So I want to talk about the state of youth sports in 2025.
Mhm.
And I kind of put this through line of post-pandemic and pre-pandemic, where and this isn't just in sports or youth sports, is everything, where 2019 feels like another dimension, and where you think about what life was like before, the sense of security we all had and all that, and the world changed so much. So
Mhm.
from your perspective in youth sports, how much have things changed since 2020?
I gotta give the caveat that, my oldest daughter was born in 2016, my youngest was born in 2019, so, like, they weren't necessarily doing sports pre-pandemic, but I was coaching, like, I coached pre-pandemic and all those different things. I don't know if necessarily the pandemic, uh, changed course for where youth sports would have been in 2025. Maybe we'd be in this exact spot in 26 or 27 or whatever. Um, but, I think a lot of signs are there. Case in point, I actually just read a book called Raising Empowered Athletes. It's by Kirsten Jones. Amazing book. And she tells a story in it, and I've said this so many different times. She tells the story about how in 2018 there was a baseball team in I forget if it was in New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania. It doesn't matter. It was somewhere in the states. And during this game, a baseball game, the fans look up and there's a plane flying over the field, and they look and there's a banner attached to it, and they all looked and it said, "Fire coaches Schrade or Kowalowski," like whatever their names were, but fire the coaches. And the fans were like, "What is happening?" And come to find out, there was a mom. I think it was a group of people, but it was specifically a mom who paid $1,250 to hire a plane just for this game to fly this
Eh,
banner over the field during the game. Now, here's the kicker. The team was 17-3. They were the best team in their division. They were the best team in the division the previous year. The team was very good by all accounts,
mhm,
but the mom of the player on the team, he wasn't playing, and she didn't
of
like the
course.
fact that her son wasn't playing, so then she hired this. So I bring this up to say, like, this is pre-pandemic, and I think, like, there's been, like, an entitlement level certainly going on for a while.
Mhm.
A lot of my history is in coaching track and field, which is more of an individual sport. So even when I coached it for 7 years, and I didn't deal too much with, like, parents. There was one situation actually in my final year where I felt like a parent was getting a little involved in uh, their kids' performance, and to me, it derailed, their experience because they had them working with, like, personal coaches and then doing track, and then, like, this particular athlete who was a literal child, um, was, in my opinion, struggling to who to listen to, and they didn't have their best senior year, and I to this day, like, I feel so bad for that kid because 'cause I'm like, they're very much a grown adult now. This is a long time ago. But it was, like, my first introduction to, like, man, like, we can really mess up a kid's future if we do it wrong. And that was something that, like, kinda stuck with me wrong, and I try to utilize what I saw negatively in that situation and impart it into the athletes I'm working with today.
Is there a pressure that you feel there? You kind of talked about you kind of have this kid's future in your hands in a weird way, right? Where is there a pressure that you as a coach feel like I got to get this right, or else like whatever the timeline becomes gets slightly altered because I wasn't at my best here. Is that
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
a real dynamic?
Oh, I'm deeply aware of that. Not everybody is, and I think that's part of the issue. And like, it's certainly not to like a crippling, debilitating factor where I'm like, oh my goodness, I got to get it right, and otherwise I'm gonna mess up this kid's future. That's not the case. But I am so deeply aware that I remember my coaches from 30 years ago. I remember the lessons they taught me. I remember the good things. I definitely remember the bad things. I remember coaches yelling at me. I remember one of my coaches pulling me out of classroom. And I don't even know what happened, but like I just remember this coach screaming at me over like something I did in school and performance and athletics at basketball and all these different things. And I just remember, again, this is almost 30 years ago. And I remember that feeling so vividly. A coach has immense power. And that's why it kills me when coaches, take advantage of that power. It
Mm,
disgusts me when coaches really take things too far. And,
of course.
um, it kills me. So to go to my experience, I'm deeply aware of it, and, like, I want my kids to work hard, but I am so aware that the majority of coaches, even the best ones, the majority of kids I coach are not gonna play sports past high school. It's not gonna happen. Statistically, there's not enough positions.
Mm,
Things happen, but I'll be damned if I am the reason that they stop playing sports. Like, that is not gonna happen on my watch. So, my trainings are very much built on that. My coaching sessions are very much built on that. They're built on joy, they're built on having fun. I get out there with them, I run, I am all over the place. I don't know how long, but I'm 39 now. I'm trying my hardest to jump and run and sprints and do all these different things. I'll do it for as long as I possibly can. But I want them to know that like sports and even working your tail off can be fun and it should be fun.
right.
So that's really what I try to bring into, my sessions.
As you know, I do a lot of sports writing, and one of the
Mhm.
stats that I'm kind of super familiar with now, I've memorized it because I've cited it so much, is that per year, about 0.2% of high school football players are good enough to make it to the NFL.
Wow.
And you think NFL rosters are pretty big,
Yeah.
but you also have to factor in how many high schools there are, how many colleges there are, and how many, only but so many slots in the NFL.
Mhm.
250 players get drafted.
Mhm.
So it's not like when you play sports, like, yeah, would you love to be on TV on Sundays or on TV playing with in the NBA or WNBA? Of course. But for most people, for the majority of people, that's not realistic. And I think what you just touched on there is that sports teaches so many applicable skills to when you're an adult. Collaboration and teamwork, being a self-starter, handling adversity,
Mhm.
handling confrontation, it teaches you all of that. And I think a lot of people forget about that. Touching back on the parent thing. So you mentioned like the overactive parent has always been a thing. You've
Yeah.
I use the football example. You especially see it in football, I feel like, because like
Yeah.
it's like, oh, my kid should be playing quarterback and you got this guy ahead of him, blah, blah, whatever. And do you think that it's magnified, like, their involvement and their kind of how adamant they become, about seeing their kid touch the field? Or is that just kind of more so of, we have more ways to document it now through, like, TikTok and Instagram and stuff, that we see more of that? And maybe it was happening before, but it was just in a small town in Iowa, who's gonna know, right? What do you think about that?
Yeah, yeah, no, I think there's some truth to it. I think, even if it was like 20 years ago, let's say like I know there was social media, but let's call it 20 years ago before social media. Like, parents could complain about it and they'd complain to like friends, family, or whatever, or maybe even the kid, but it wasn't necessarily magnified. You weren't
Mm,
seeing clips, online. Like I'll see clips of like friends of mine posting their kids on, like their shots and everything that they do on social media, like so cool. And for me, like, I'm very secure in my parenting. I'm very secure in my kids' future. Like, if they wanna take it far, great. If they don't, I'm cool with it. Like, whatever they wanna do, I always tell them, like, "If you wanna be the best mathlete in the world, sign me up." Like, I'm not great. I'm gonna get you a tutor, but, like, hey, let's do it. Like, I'm here courtside for you. Like, this is your journey. Um, but yeah, like, I think now there's a lot of parents who can take to social media. So if they have a gripe with a coach or if they have a gripe with a trainer or an industry or anything like that, they can take it. And it's rare. I don't want to say super rare, but like it's rare-ish to like go on social media, gripe about something, and to get like a bunch of people who are like, well, actually, like, hey, cousin, I think you're wrong because of this and that. It's usually like, yeah, cousin, yeah, aunts, yeah, uncle, like I'm with you. So you get like positive reinforcement, and then every time you see a like or a heart or anything like that, you're like, yeah, all these people agree with me. So it's easy to do that. And then of course, if you really feel aggrieved with a coach to the fact that you would pay over $1,000 to fly a banner over their game, then you're probably feeling incensed and you want to get that feedback. You want to get that validation because even if there's a part of you that thinks that you're wrong, it's like, if enough people think that I'm right, then like I must be right. Of course, I mean, you see that certainly outside of sports too, but yeah, you can see that. But like, unfortunately, parents don't see the full picture. I think, and I'd be the first to admit, as a parent, like you have rose-colored glasses when it comes to your kids. Like you see that the work that they're doing, but like you don't see the work that their teammates are doing. And there's a natural talent, and most parents don't want their kids to fail. But I will be the first to admit, and I say this all the time, and people look at me like I'm crazy. I want kids to fail when it comes to sports. I need them to fail when it comes to sports. Tyrese Haliburton was just on Old Man of the Three talking about, failure. And, he was asked point blank, like, what led to your insane clutch run, which obviously hitting a game winning shot in every single step of the playoff journey, like from the first round to the finals, like that is insane.
Right.
And he literally credited Coach Carlisle for his ability to let him fail when he got to Indiana, which directly correlated to him succeeding in the playoffs and having one of the most insane runs in NBA playoff history, almost 80 years of NBA playoffs. And like his name, no matter what he does for the rest of his career, he has etched his name in just clutch ability. Which, we're still talking about Robert Ory. Like, we're still talking about like even like Jerry West for his clutchness.
Right.
Like, he lost more finals than anything, but like we love that clutch factor. And Tyrese Haliburton is like, yeah, stem from failure. So I tell people all the time, let kids fail, let kids make mistakes because that helps them learn.
First of all, I don't know if it gets too much more unhinged than paying over a rack to get a banner flying during the game. Like
Unhinged.
what are we doing, man? Like, you could have found a better usage of $1,000. And
Yeah,
second,
give it to
the
me.
yeah, literally donate that. The Halliburton point, the all-time example of that is Michael Jordan, right? Cut from the high school team kind of thing, and then again, we talked about earlier, overcoming adversity, being able to fail and then kind of pick yourself up and continue to kind of get better, get better, get better.
Mhm.
And that is applicable in all sorts of things, whether it's like applying for jobs or it's kind of your craft, you want to get better at it. There's a lesson there that I think that, maybe some parents, like you said, they're looking at it through a certain biased lens, of wanting their kid to be happy and succeed, that they maybe don't see the lesson there. Um,
Yeah, yeah, like, I use if a kid misses layups and people miss layups, they don't need
yeah,
me as, like, their trainer or coach to be like, "Why'd you miss that layup?" Like, "What do you mean, why did I miss that layup?" Like, coach, I went up and I intentionally said, "You know what? Yeah, I got a wide open layup, but let me miss this on purpose just so I can get yelled at." Like, nobody tries to, and, like, so my job is to be like, "Oh, yeah, like, I saw the layup, maybe this is how we can do a little bit better next time." Like, kids are smart. Like, if they turn the ball over, they know they turned the ball over. If they miss a
right,
shot, they know they missed a shot. How do I help correct them? And I just see so many parents and coaches like just get down on their kids. They're like, "Why'd you do this? Why'd you do that?" Like, I don't know, man. I'm 10. Like, I'm 10. I'm figuring life out. So why are you yelling at me? Why don't you have your emotions in check? Like, why
right,
don't
right.
you talk to somebody about this? Like, let me turn these questions around on you. So yeah, I'm deeply aware of
Uh,
it.
Let me switch here to specialization. So, as you may know, and I know my listeners know, I am a avid watcher of sports documentaries, and two that come to mind in terms of not specialization, the opposite of diversification, are Deion Sanders and Bo Jackson, both of
Mm,
whom had documentaries about them that ESPN did. Obviously, Deion, in his stretch where he was playing football and baseball in Atlanta at the same time,
mhm,
and Bo when he was playing in the NFL and also playing for the Kansas City Royals.
mhm,
And it seems like in today's landscape, we've gone away from the multi-sport athlete where we've gone with somebody we're just like, "All right, listen, you're really good at this, and you're kinda good at this, and you're kinda good at that. You gotta pick one," right?
mhm,
And you see it all the time now where a player Kyler Murray played baseball for a long time, and then you kind of have to choose or whatever. But even further back now into high school, you're kind of you're pretty good at baseball, you're pretty good at basketball, you're pretty good at football, and you kind of have to pick a lane. And
Mhm.
it's not a situation where this person can be awesome at all at two or three other sports. So, do you think that this is a good thing, or should is it better to have multiple disciplines kind of for a young athlete, just kind of to be able to compete in multiple different sports?
Yeah, I think it's really important for kids to play different sports, for a couple of reasons. I think Klay Thompson's really advocated for it. His brother obviously was a professional baseball player. He played baseball growing up. I think he played with Kevin Love in Portland. So, and both of their dads were NBA players. So, like, they clearly had like some kind of like, freak athlete gene in them. So, like, different story. But, like, he's a big advocate for it. And as am I. You see I don't know. You see kids who are really good at a sport and you're like, "Oh, that kid could be amazing in another sport." Like, there's so many different crossovers. Like, whether you do I don't know, like, if you're a field hockey player, you could probably play soccer.
Right.
If you're a softball player, a soccer player, you could probably play flag football. Coincidentally, last night, actually, I went to one of my clients' flag football games, and, she joined sports this year. Her dad was actually, like, a mentor of mine when I was on the track team back in high school. Her dad was a year older than me, kinda took me under his wing, like, helped me work hard. Like, he was amazing. Now I get to work with his daughter. It's like one of the coolest things. But, I went to her game last night and a friend of mine was there whose daughter was also on the team. We were talking and she made a comment about how just coaches in general love the idea of players playing multiple sports, but hate the idea of them missing their sport.
Right.
So it's like, oh, in theory, yeah, yeah, go do other things. Don't miss our practice. Don't miss our games. Don't miss this and that. Everyone wants like that full commitment. And me, I don't know. Like I do coach a team. Like I have multiple teams that I coach for basketball. And I tell parents straight up, first of all, it's rec league. Like I don't coach AAU. I don't anticipate or plan to. I'm not saying I wouldn't, because if my daughter, like, wanted to play, then I'd probably be like, "Yeah, sure." Yeah, I'd coach, probably save me, $2,000 on registration fees, like, if I did, so I'd probably do it for that alone. But yeah, it's I tell all my parents, like, family first. Like, no matter what, if your kid is burnt out after a long day or whatever like that, take the day off. Like, if you are considering going on a family vacation, but you're like, I don't know, but we have practice on this night, go on family vacation.
Mhm.
Like, again, I coach 3rd and 4th graders.
Right.
I coach, but even if I coach, high schoolers, it's like, yes, commitment is important for sure. Like, there's no doubt about it. And like, yes, there's been times where like I'm going into a game, I create my lineups because I want to make sure I have even playing time for everyone. That's how our league rolls. And I'm so keen on that. And there's been times that like 5 minutes before the game, I hear like, oh, so and so won't be there. And I'm like, oh man, like I wish I knew that beforehand, but it's never like, what do you mean they're not going to be here? It's like, I'm sorry, their grandma's in town and we haven't seen her in a while. So like, yeah, we're going to do that instead of the game. And I'm always like, of course, like,
Mhm.
yes, family first. And there needs to be more of that. Like, sure, there's a balance between commitment and all those different things, but like, they're kids. There is life to be lived. And I focus on the whole athlete, and part of that is their life outside of the sports that we do. And I'm so deeply aware of that. And I want kids to be aware of that too, because I don't know if they hear that a lot. So if they don't hear from other ways, then this coach, me, I'm gonna tell them what we're doing is important, but it's not the most important thing in your life. Please be aware of that.
I want to double back on the AAU thing, and I didn't have this in the rundown, but before we started recording, we kind of brought it up, and I kind of curious on your take on it. So, in the
Mhm,
NBA right now, that we have never seen more international talent flourish, and
mhm,
there's been a conversation about skills development in Europe versus skills development in the US. And a big kind of bugaboo of everyone has been the AAU system in the sense that you're traveling around, you're playing multiple games, just playing games, games, games. Whereas in Europe, there's more of a focus on practice and, running set plays and doing all this stuff. And it's almost like a more structured environment versus like a freestyle environment. And so a lot of European players who come in, what are they good at? Shooting, passing, and so a lot of the stuff that they're just repetition, repetition, repetition on. So,
Mhm,
and a lot of people have you look at the Olympics recently, it felt like the world was starting to catch up, right?
mhm,
Because you look at Germany and France and all these countries, who have implemented these academy systems that are really developing talent. Even Serbia, who only has obviously the one big star in Jokic, but a couple other fringe NBA players and a lot of guys that people don't know. And they're out there competing where in the past it was always a bloodbath and there was just such a separation.
mhm.
So do you think that the AAU system has has done a disservice to American basketball players?
Ooh, it's a good question. I'm gonna try not to give a, politician's answer and go like, "Well, actually, this and that." Um,
So I'd
has
love
it
your
done
perspective, man, because like it's easy to say AAU's trash, right? Because you
Yeah.
see some of these coaches and all that, and they're a little rough around the edges sometimes, and it feels a little nefarious from the outside looking in. So if somebody's involved, I'm kind of curious what you see.
Yeah, for sure. I'll say, like, has it served a disservice? I'm gonna say no, but I'm gonna give a big caveat to it. Like, I say no because, like, again, you look at the league 1 through 450, and at least for the American players, like, I would, uh, I would guess 99% of them have played AU basketball. So, like, goes to show, like, there's something. And then if you look at like D1, even D2, D3, like college sports, like the overwhelming majority of all these kids have played AU basketball. So like clearly there's something there that's getting them. Now, for me, like this is where I think there are better programs than others. Because you do see that AU, generally speaking, can be a cash grab. And it can be that way. It's very easy because me as a parent, like I've got 2 kids, I want the best for them. Again, like, I'm aware of it, like, I don't want the best for them where I'm going to mortgage my house to send them to a tournament in Orlando so they can play 20 minutes a game and, like, back to back, 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 back games, like, that's not what I'm gonna do, but parents will, and parents, like, we look at our kids and we want the best, we wanna do everything possible, so, yeah, like, you promise that you're gonna get them to the next level? Oh, perfect, take $5,000. Oh, I need to pay, $40 every time I go to one of their games? For sure, we need to drive places, we need to pay for flights, like, I'll do it. Um, and it's not for everybody, like, I've seen plenty of kids who, like, I'm out there, I'm like, I don't think you're ready for AAU, like, I don't think you're getting enough from it, and even, I met with, they're now a client, but I met with somebody last night after the flag football game, just about coaching their son, and they talked about the AAU programs, and I was very specific. I was like, "Hey, in our trainings, like, we can work on speed and agility, things that they don't necessarily get in their AAU practices. I wanna make sure that I'm not burning them out." Like, I'm very clear on that. And, the mom was like, you can work on some basketball skills. I don't necessarily know if they're getting all that they need there." And that for me, it
Yeah.
kinda, like, broke my heart because 'cause I'm like, "Man, you're paying all this money for an AU program," and you're kinda like, "Yeah, they're not really getting a lot." From it. And that's where you do have great coaches who care so much about the kids and really dive into them and support the families. And then you do have others that are like, my kid likes to play, so I'm going to create a team. I'm going to take a bunch of money and I'm going to organize this. But like, I'm not going to have admin. I'm not going to have help. I'm not going to organize it. It's just a thing to do. And when you're taking kids along for that ride, it's one thing to go off on your own. I'm going off my own right now and starting my personal training business and like, that's that. But to take other families along with you on that fantasy ride, like you better be prepared. And not everybody is. And you're seeing that in the AAU circuit. I don't know. I just don't think like playing 8 games in a weekend is necessarily the best for kids' health in the future.
Right.
I do want to see kids playing more because I think creativity is a huge part. I think is missing a lot. You see a lot of robotics out there on the court. Kids who are
Mhm.
just, I need to go here, go there, A to B, this and that. But it's like, I don't know. You watch some of the best players, even the European players, Luka, Jokic. I don't want to just focus on the top. Even that Campazzo, I think was the guy who.
Facundo Campazzo, the guy played for them.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
You watch him, and it's like, "Oh my
Love
goodness,"
that
like,
guy. Yeah.
yes, the creativity was off the charts, and, like, I wanna see more of that, and that really comes from playing pickup against people who you don't know, like, "Oh,
Right.
how can I get these angles?" You gotta try things. So, yeah, long-winded answer to say, like, no, I don't necessarily think the AAU is, like, like, the biggest detriment, but, like, there is so much room to work in, and I hopefully somebody is able to call that out and really work within the system, and I think there are people for sure, but it's just gotta get more prevalent.
So a follow up there in the sense of cost. So because you kind of mentioned the paying all parents paying all this money to get their kid to go to different events. It's
Mm,
a criticism that a lot of people have about American soccer is that
mm,
travel soccer is so expensive, and that's why we don't get great players wanting to play soccer,
yeah.
right? And so, do you think we're pricing out the lower class here a little bit?
Yes, yes, there's a big concern that I have, and I wish that I had more information on this, but somebody, maybe it was Draymond Green, was talking about how basketball is becoming kinda like a rich person sport. I'm paraphrasing here, and I might totally get it wrong, but
I agree with it. Yeah.
yeah, he was alluding to the fact that, like, it's become like a pay to play scheme, and, like, you're missing out on kids who are just "Man, I went to the park, and, like, there was this kid, Ryan, who was, like, legit," and you go and, like, talk to
Mm,
this Ryan kid, and you're like, his parents are working overnights and, just, like, doing the thing, he's not really on a program, but, like, the kid is legit, and he's just running through everybody. Like, I remember this kid, Johnny, who I used to play against when I was younger. Like, I was on an AAU team. I certainly didn't come from like money or anything like that, but like, I was on an AAU team. I played a lot. And then I would go play in the gym, and there was this kid, Johnny, who would just demolish everybody. And like, he wasn't on an AAU circuit, he wasn't anything, but the kid was just good.
mm,
I don't know whatever happened to him. Funny enough, he went to the school that Jimmer Fredette went to, so I think he probably played with Jimmer Fredette at one point because I used to play against him when I was younger. And while Jimmer Fredette, of course, like became a household name in college and played in the NBA, this kid Johnny, who was like maybe like 2 years younger, this kid Johnny was good, and he would run all of us, Jimmer included. And I don't know whatever happened to him. But again, that is why also when people talk about rankings for like 9-year-olds and 10-year-olds, it's like, come on. Like
mhm.
Jimmer grew a ton. Jimmer was like, it was like he was like a little overweight, like when he was like 9, 10, and like when I used to play with him. And then the kid grew up, he got super strong and just he
Gotcha.
developed. I wouldn't have ever guessed that he became who he became, but he did. And that's why rankings for kids is insane to me.
He's a Jimmer for that Chinese Basketball Association legend, by the way.
Legend, legend. Knicks legend too. I don't think he ever
Yeah.
missed a shot with the Knicks. I think he scored like 4 points. He had like 2 free throws, but had like 2 field goals.
Listen, man, if you wanted to go through a list of obscure NBA players, all you gotta do is 2001 through 2018-19,
Yeah.
and you find some names, man, what's good? Alonzo Trier,
Yeah.
but, Damian Dotson. But,
Yeah.
yeah, so, yeah, I did wanna get your take on that because I do find it interesting. I remember, like, this past draft and, when the Sixers drafted DJ Edgecombe
Mm,
and, out of Baylor, and he was talking about the struggles he had, growing up in poverty and all that, and a lot of it became a focus where some people online were joking like, "Oh, we finally got a draft prospect as a quote unquote trench baby again," and it's like we're not trying to like living in poverty fucking sucks. Like anybody
yes.
who has can tell you that, and it's just almost like but it does speak to this idea that the NBA and basketball at large has become more pay to play. Like you were saying, so thank
Mhm.
you for the perspective on that. I know I didn't prepare you for that one, but you helped me answer it as best as you could, so appreciate that.
Oh, for sure.
I want to move on to representation. I think in 2025, we're in an atmosphere where we have empowered kids to be themselves as much as we possibly can. Understand where you come from, understand your identity in ways that maybe when we were growing up, it wasn't really as prevalent. I think of this, maybe this is just my perspective being Arab, where my culturally, when Arabs immigrated to the US, we tried to assimilate a little bit too much, I think. And
Mm.
it's like in my father's generation, they assimilated too much. They want to rock the boat, right? And
Yeah.
and now we're kind of trying to reclaim that a little bit more. And we've had the repercussions of that just from the way we're perceived globally. And so when you're kind of looking at that and people are more cognizant of their identity and different cultures and backgrounds and stuff like that, how do you handle that as when you're coaching? Because I feel like sometimes in the past we were kind of said try to make it a sports is this monolith and we're all in it together. We got the same jersey on, so that's all that matters, right?
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
people are individuals at the same time. So
Mhm.
in 2025, how do you and other coaches you think manage that?
Yeah, for sure. I manage it by, just looking at my kids and seeing them as they are. Like, I'm not trying to have them be anybody than us. So, like, let's say from, like a religious background or something like that. If somebody has to miss like a well, we don't have anything on Sundays, but like if they weren't able to do a Sundays, like it is what it is. Like that's your family, like and that's your background. I get it. If there's like a certain holiday that comes up or like a celebration, I know Seventh Day Adventists like don't do anything. I think it's like Saturday nights is like
Mhm.
kind of like off limits. So like if that's the case, I'm like, do you like I see you as a whole person, and I want that to be who you are. So like because naturally that also helps them on the court if they're able to be themselves. Like I talked about Kim Pazzo earlier, or like the creativity, there's a lot of turnovers that comes with that, but like he has the freedom and creativity to be an amazing player. Same thing with like the Jokic's and Lukas, and you can go to like Jason Williams, like every feel like his birthday is like every month because like the NBA is always posting clips like best white chocolate clips. It's like, damn, is this his birthday again? What's his, like I see clips of him all the time. But like that stems from the creativity that he brings to the game, and that's stems from the comfort. So if somebody is trying to assimilate to whether it be my program or like a culture or whatever it is, like I'm very much be who you are. And if I don't like know their background or anything like that, then teach me about it. It's not something that generally comes up a lot, like especially I'm working with kids who certainly on the younger side. But
Right.
again, I wanna be that representation. That way, when they get older, if they have coaches that are like, "No, you need to be here on Sundays," they're like, "Man, like, my last coach was, like, pretty cool about, like, all of this stuff," and, like, I want my mindset and the mindset that you're talking about to be their foundation for their
Right.
future, so they don't get this, like, warped view of, like, "Oh, no, like, I'm a part of sports, and I have to be there all the time, or I have to be this way." This is kind of like an offshoot of your question, but, like, there's this one girl who I coach who is an amazing player, amazing. I don't have her every season because we change teams every couple years or every
Right.
couple months. She does not talk, just
Hmm.
doesn't doesn't love talking, but I
Okay.
communicate with her really well, and her family is great. They're always so sweet. They're like, "Oh, she's really excited to be on your team. She might not necessarily say anything," but I'm like, "That's okay. I don't need her to." And I'm not trying to be like, "Oh, smile more, talk more. I need you to speak up." It's like, no, she clearly isn't comfortable in that, and I empower it. And I gotta say, when I see her on other teams, it kills me because like the other teams don't necessarily utilize her the way that she's utilized on our team. They don't necessarily give her the keys like I give her the keys. And her parents have kind of alluded to as much. They're like, "Man, we really miss being on your team because like you get her." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"I do. I'm not trying to change her. I'm not trying to be, you know, uh, make her somebody she's not. She is who she is. My daughter is who she is. My daughter isn't the most aggressive player in the world, but she loves basketball. I've coached plenty of other people who are super aggressive, and sure, there's parts of me that I'm like, oh man, if only this kid had this, or if only they have that, but they don't. And so I could either harp on that and wish that they have that, or I can look at what I have and enhance who they are and help them be who they are going to be anyway. So
You know,
yeah, I think about that a lot.
you mentioned the personality aspect, and I'm having my partner watch The Last Dance with me right now.
Yeah.
So we have, like, this agreement where she's, like, super into true crime documentaries. I'm obviously into sports docs, so we kinda alternate.
Yeah.
Well, we're kinda getting through Last Dance, and there's, an episode that kinda talks about the Bulls acquiring Dennis Rodman, and it shows, like, how connected he was to Chuck Daly in Detroit, right?
Mhm,
And how disconnected he was from the staff in San Antonio and how
mhm,
much of a difference that made. And then when he gets to Chicago and gets in Phil Jackson's hand, that connection reignites. And it's something people forget about. Like having a coach that gets you, gets your style is so important. It's why it's so important when teams that have established rosters,
mhm,
I probably am thinking about this from a Knicks perspective, like to, be able to right fit, with the personalities there. It's so important. And people, I think, sometimes just think, oh, who cares? Just a coach, whatever. They're going to drop a play and, the players are going to play. And that's all that matters. It's actually no, like you need to be able to have some level of communication. Think about your job, like how much
mhm,
easier it is to do your job when you have a good supportive manager that gets your workflow tendencies versus someone who doesn't.
mhm.
It's night and day, right?
It
And
is.
uh, I want to talk a little bit. We talked about social media earlier. I want to talk about branding, personal
Yeah.
branding. So we see this more in high school probably than in elementary and middle school. But
Mhm,
people are on social media. Middle schoolers, high schoolers have TikTok, they have Instagram, whatever, and it feels like there's this desire to create a personal brand, and I could say this maybe is a trickle down effect of the NIL era because if you're a freshman in high school, you're only a few years away from college,
Mhm,
and that's when you could potentially make NIL money and partnerships with brands and that sort of thing.
mhm.
Do you think that's kinda changed the way kids kind of approach playing sports now is because they wanna get noticed, they wanna maybe have that viral moment, they wanna splash that half court 3,
Yeah,
to get on YouTube or whatever? So,
spot on.
what do you take on that?
Yeah, spot on. I think I was actually for my podcast, I was talking to, a friend of mine, Tanya Hales, and her
Oh,
son,
guest of
plays.
the pod, Tanya Hills, by the way. We
Yes!
love
Oh,
Tanya
that's
Hills.
right. That's right.
Yeah, we got
Tanya's
her back. We love
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's amazing. So, but, like, one of the things that she said, she was talking about her son playing basketball, and she was like, "Man, you gotta be like a social media manager just to manage, like, your kid's profile," and she was like, "I don't love that, like, I wanna be mom." Like, I'm
It sucks,
forgetting
yeah.
exactly how she said it, but, like, I loved her phrasing of it. But you see that so much, and, like, the social media aspect is really difficult because on one hand, sure, like, there's a lot of coaches who are using social media to connect and learn about kids, no doubt. But, like, again, if your kid is good, like, they're gonna get found, like, they're gonna get spotted, like, maybe not by 100 coaches, but maybe by 25, and that 25 is all you need. But so many people are looking for the numbers, and, I use really when I talk to kids about branding, like, I use 2 people as an example, and I'm sure the kids have no idea who I'm talking about, but there's, like, Julian Newman, who I think it was in 2012 was labeled, it was like the best 6th grade basketball player in the world. He's on, like, The Ellen Show, he's on, all sorts of insane shows showing off his skills. He was playing varsity as a 5th grader,
Wow.
scoring, like, 91 points in a game. This is in, like, 2012, and it was like, "Oh, damn, like, this kid's gonna be, like, next up." Well, the kid grew up to be 5'7" and he graduated in 2020. The family ended up like they were doing like social media, was getting all sorts of NIL deals. I don't know how many followers he had all over the place, but it was probably in the millions. And if you look up his name now, I think he was averaging less than a point a game. He bounced around to a bunch of different schools and didn't have necessarily the career that people thought he would when he was in 5th grade. And same thing goes with Mikey Williams. Mikey Williams was a freshman in high school in San Diego. His first game, I think as a freshman, he scored like, 50 points. He scored like over 90. He was just like insane, killer mentality. Ended up transferring, I think, for sophomore year to a school in North Carolina, transferred back to school in San Diego and for his senior year. But he had all sorts of legal troubles, all sorts of issues, and has played now for 3 different colleges in his collegiate career. Most recently, Sac State, which is actually right up the road from me. So I'm curious. I'm like, I might have to go check out a game. But again, he was ranked in the top 50 in his graduating class, and it did not pan out the way that he thought it would. I can't help but wonder, like, if he didn't have the social media between him, Julian, like, if they would have just gone on to be, like, really competent, good players. But again, like we were talking about earlier with parents, you get those likes, you get the retweets, you get, NBA players commenting on some of your stuff. It's like, oh, dang, like, okay, like,
Yeah.
I'm pretty good. And it can change your entire perspective. So now you're hooping for the love of the game. Or before you were hooping for the love of the game, now you're hooping for endorsement deals. Now you're training for this. So like when coach gives you some harsh feedback that is accurate, or maybe even if it's like 5% inaccurate, but like it's mostly rooted in truth, now you can take that 5% and go like, hmm, yeah, that's not what my 500,000 followers on Instagram are telling me.
Right.
So like now I'm gonna go to a different program. I think of Michael Williams, who again played for multiple different high schools, has played for 3 different colleges. Like that instability is not great. Um, and then the last thing I'll kind of mention on this is, this summer, actually, I was really lucky to work at a Tiffany Hayes basketball camp that was put on by a friend of mine, Brittany Moore. Her and I went to high school together, so she's like a legit like friend of mine, a long time, and she's become a basketball trainer. Access Your Game. She's amazing. She has worked her tail off and is now doing basketball camps with WNBA players. Half the Valkyries team came to this camp. It was amazing. And I'm just there to like help support like whatever you need. Like I was coaching at it, which was super cool. But they built out an hour of their like 6-hour training time to NIL specifically.
Mm.
And part of me, my daughter was there and she's in 3rd grade, or in 4th grade now. But when I first saw it, I was like, do we really need to be going over this? But as they were going over the presentation, I was like, oh, dang, this is important for kids to know because Tiffany Hayes, specifically in her representation, they were talking about never change who you are for these deals. Like there's good deals that kind of like enhance who you are and kind of speak to who you are. And then there's other deals that you can take that take you out of the person you are. Like you don't want to do that. So thankfully people are talking more about it. But man, it's a struggle. But I will say, if I was a college coach, I would put all my resources into finding those kids who are just dogs. Like, I would put all my resources into finding the kids who don't have the Instagram followers, but who take pride in going against somebody who has the Instagram follower and just takes them to school, like takes
Mm.
them to task, like shows up for those moments. Like, I genuinely think even from an NBA perspective, there are gonna be some but future GMs who make their money off of finding diamonds in the rough in the second round because they didn't necessarily have all of the accolades in high
You
school
could
and
say that's
college.
already happened, right? Like, look at what Oklahoma
Yes.
City's done. Denver's done pretty good later in drafts in the
Yes.
Jokic era. You know,
Mhm.
I mean, the Pacers are a great example of that, right?
Yes.
You know that you're a team that maybe isn't gonna attract a star free agent, but if you do your due diligence in the draft and, really win on the margins, like, who'd they get? The Pacers got somebody I really like, undrafted free agent. I can't think of it right now, but, just kinda looking around, that's just kinda the deal, and you mentioned players that kinda transfer around. I think it's kind of the unspoken side of NIL in the transfer portal. So I think
Mhm.
about, Imani Bates, who
Mhm.
has bounced around the NBA a little bit now, was, like, on Cleveland last year, and
Yeah.
he Detroit product, and when I lived in Detroit, he was coming up, and he was a big deal. He was getting
Mhm.
to Memphis, and he was a, top recruit or whatever in that class. Went through some stuff, transferred to EMU in Eastern Michigan, and, he was supposed to be a first round pick, ended up getting picked in the mid-second round, late second round, and, it just goes to show you, like, a lot of times, like, when you create these brands and these profiles, again, you think about when you or I were 16 and 17 and 18 years old, and it's like a different person than when you're in your late 30s, right? And
Mhm.
I feel like a lot of times us as analysts of games and stuff, we kind of overlook that fact a little bit too much. I recently wrote a piece on Substack about Arch Manning, and
Mm.
the premise was like he's in an unwinnable situation because you have this lineage and this family name that's so prominent. So you're supposed to be them.
Mhm.
Like everybody comes in and they built you up, and social media amplifies that even more. Like back in the day, yeah, maybe you have a newspaper profile, a magazine feature written about you or whatever. Somebody's talking about you on local news. Now it's millions of people talking about you, right?
Million.
And they're like, "This guy is Heisman. We should tank the season to draft him number 1 overall before he's entrenched as the full-time starter." It's crazy, right?
Mhm.
And and because of how poorly he started the season against Ohio State, he can't win because if he does better, it becomes, well, that's where you're supposed to be, right?
Mhm.
And if he does terrible, he's like, "Oh, couldn't handle the pressure,"
Mhm.
right? And it's just like, and then I like in my piece, I'm like, "Can we like take a step back and realize this dude's 20 years old?" It
Yeah.
like,
Yes.
like you're not really all there. Like one of the worst things you could do as a millennial in your late 30s is look at your Facebook memories of shit you would post 10 years ago, 15 years ago, right? And you're like, "What the hell was I thinking? Why did I say that?" You know?
Yeah.
And then, that's when you're 23, 24, 25.
Yeah.
Subtract a few years, it's even worse, and I
Yep.
just feel like these high profile players especially are in this pressure cooker, and
Mhm.
you have to say the right thing and do the right, and I think that's why we have Jason Tatum gets this criticism all the time. Uh, Inauthentic, corny,
Yeah.
whatever. No, he's just especially media trained because he's not trying to say the wrong thing. Now,
Spot on.
the flip side of that is you got guys like Anthony Edwards who just don't give a shit, so
Yes. Yes, which is a whole nother
which I
yes, a
love.
whole other
And
there.
I love that.
Yes.
I'm a chaos merchant, so I love people like Anthony Edwards and James Harden, right? Just
Yeah.
do whatever. But that is a factor. I want to close the discussion here before we kind of pivot to the Fever and the Pacers because I
Mhm.
can't have you on and not talk about Indiana basketball. Um, it, how do you approach mental health? So mental health, I think, in the 70s and 80s and maybe in the 90s as well was kind of shoved under the rug, right? And it's like,
Mhm.
whatever, tough through it, especially in male sports.
Yeah.
Man up, right? Is
Yeah,
something you
yep.
would hear all
Man
the
up.
time.
I know.
Yeah.
"Sir, I'm 9. I don't know what that means."
So, like, How has that changed in youth sports now? Are we a little bit more conscious of the mental load on top of the physical load, that players have? And are we teaching them mental skills in addition to physical skills?
Yeah, I am. Like, I can't necessarily speak for other
Can't
coaches
speak
too,
for anyone
but
else,
else,
yeah.
yeah, like, I know there's plenty of people who aren't. I think we're in an interesting spot because, like, everyone's aware of mental health, but then you do have coaches, and certainly like me, who are like, "Yeah, like, I'm leaning into it, like, there's value in it, there's truth in it." Like, I personally need that, and, like, I want my kids to feel that too. Again, I feel when kids are on the court with me, like, I want them to feel comfortable, in making mistakes, that they're not gonna get screamed at, that they can show up well, and sure, there are kids who can, like, fake the funk and, like, just,
Mhm.
kinda go through it, but, like, if they know mom or dad is gonna scream at them in the car ride home, like, there's, like, this undercover pressure to the practice, and I want practice to feel free, like, I want it to feel normal, and that's just I don't know, like, some people could say, "Well, that's how we make the best athletes." I don't know, man. Like, if you got the data, sure, but even if you have all the data that shows that, like, screaming at kids is gonna help them, I want nothing to do with that. But, you know, um, I also the reason I say we're in an interesting spot is because then you have coaches who are more like me, then you have other coaches who don't believe in it, then you have other coaches who are like, it's this whole mental health thing, and everybody's, gotta focus on that, and there's kind of like a kinda shrug off of it. So,
Mm,
I think we just have to continue to go down this route. Like, you have people who are always gonna be of the mindset who are like, "Well, that's how coaches yelled at me." And it's like, "Yeah, man, have you looked at your life, though? I don't know if you're necessarily a shining example of who we want our
right,
kids to be with,
right.
like, the messiness that you have going on." But, it's I'm going full in on mental health because again, I want my athletes to be full human beings. Like, I want them to be at work when they're 25, 30, 40, and being like, "Oh, yeah, man, I had this coach who was, like, really cool, and, the teamwork that he taught us, like, when I was 10, like, I'm using that for my team today." Like, that's my success. Like, if I have a kid who plays in the WNBA or NBA or D1 or anything like that, awesome. But again, they did that, and, like, I was a part of their journey, like, I was in the stands for their journey, but I didn't do that, they did that, and I do hear from coaches, I talk to coaches, and who are like, "Oh, man, I had this kid go D1. Yeah, I was working with them." It's like, again, you help them. You didn't
Right.
do it for them. So yeah, with the mental health aspect, I care so deeply about it. I'm glad that people are focused on it a little more. There's places like the Aspen Institute who do a really good job at like focusing on mental health for kids and for the game. Um, Center for Healing and Justice in Sports. That's another organization that is amazing. When it comes to focusing on it. So we're going the right direction for sure. You're always gonna have naysayers, but like I'm just kind of, hey man, there's a lot of idiots in this world, and I
You know,
just gotta keep it moving.
I feel like the trend has shifted
Yeah.
because the biggest example I could think of this is in college football and the NFL.
Mhm.
'Cause football was the worst example of the toxic coach,
Yeah.
right? Because 'Cause you're getting in there, you're yelling, blah, blah, blah. Like, I look at, Dan Campbell with the Detroit Lions, right? You
Mm.
look at him, and you think he's gonna be a yell, yell, yell coach
Mhm.
because he's got the physical stature, former tight end,
Mhm.
you assume it's gonna be like that, but it's not. Like,
Yeah.
he's a very compassionate dude. You look at Sean McVay, big collaborator,
Mhm.
one of my
Mhm.
favorite coaches to watch operate. I love Sean McVay. I think
Yeah.
I like guys who are like our age range,
Yeah.
late
Yes.
30s, early 40s,
Yeah.
as you relate to them. But,
For sure.
like Bruce Pearl just retired. He was a guy who was a yeller, and
Mm.
problematic for other reasons. But,
It's like, "Ye yep, yep, good
but
old Pop House
those
should have
guys
retired."
those guys are kind of fading away, I feel like, right? You're getting guys who are more conscious of it, and even the old time coaches are starting to adapt. Like, I think about now former Knicks coach Tom Thibodeau. The
Mhm.
way he operated a sideline in New York
Mhm.
is night and day from how we operated it in Chicago and Minnesota, and he's kind of see he softened and he realized like that doesn't resonate with players anymore. And I think the coaches that accept that, they're gonna do well. The
Mhm.
coaches that don't, you're gonna have players leaving left and right. And they're not trying to deal with that. You know,
Yeah.
like
Yes.
why would they? I'm not trying to
Mhm.
deal with that either. Like I'm not trying to have somebody yell at me all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Like and I told you I watched way too many sports documentaries. There's one about, SMU football in the '80s,
Mm.
called, Pony Excess, which is about how they were, cheating and paying players and stuff, obviously before NIL in the '80s. And they show clips of this guy, Ron Meyer, who went on to coach the New England Patriots briefly,
Mhm.
before fizzling out. And you see him on the practice, but he just yelling, yelling, yelling. And I'm just like, how did this get through? Like, if you're like Eric Dickerson, who was playing for him at the time, I'm gonna try to hear that. You
Oh,
know, like
oh,
I'm the number one back in the country. Like if that happened today, that he would be transferred out the next day because it's
yes.
like fuck this guy, right?
Yes. No, man, I this past weekend, I went to one of my clients', AAU basketball games, and
Yeah,
the coach on the other side was, like, screaming, but it's a small gym, not a lot of people there,
right.
he was yelling, and, like, some of the things he said, I looked back as I was sitting with, my client's parents, and I looked back at them, I said, "Is this normal?" And they said, "This is not normal, like, this is pretty extreme," but, like, his coach like, at one point, and maybe I misheard it or misread it, but he said, he was like, if that happens again, like, this can be a problem, and this is, like, a big dude coaching, like, an all-girls team, again, like, it's 13U, and I was like, "Bro, what are you doing telling these girls it's gonna be a problem if they, like, miss a defensive assignment?" Not to mention, that team won the game by, like, 20 points, like, it wasn't even close. What what are you doing? Like, if I was a parent on that team, like, I got no problem, like, coach how you need to coach, but, like, do not scream at my kid. And I'll tell you this before I even forget it. I don't know if you remember a couple months ago, there was this coach in upstate New York who was in the news for pulling
I
his
saw
girl's
that.
hair.
Saw that. Yeah.
I'm looking, I'm like, "Oh, this is abhorrent," and then I realized I played for this dude. Like, I
Oh no
played for this kid.
way.
Yeah, yeah, it
Oh
was so crazy. I heard the name because when I first heard about it, I was like, "Oh, man, like, that's insane. That's crazy." And then I heard the name, I was like, "Wait a minute, that name sounds familiar." Then I saw a picture of him, and I kid you not, it was like this, like, memory, like, flashback to me. Like, I don't remember anything that like, I don't have anything traumatic that I'm like, "Oh, I remember this and that." But I remember he was a tough dude, a really tough dude, but he was super well respected in upstate New York. He ran all the camps. I went to every single camp in upstate New York my entire childhood, so, like, he was at a lot of them.
no.
And, but yeah, when I saw it, I was like, wow, that is insane. But again, he was somebody who couldn't adapt, didn't adapt.
Yeah.
And like now he's known forever, even though he's a Hall of Fame coach, had like a 50-year career in basketball, really transformed basketball in upstate New York. I'm sure Jimmer Fredette played for him at some point. A lot of us did. Um, but now he's known as that guy who couldn't control his anger and ripped his player's ponytail. Like,
It's the Bobby Knight effect, right? Like we
yes.
forget everything that he did because we just think about the chair.
Yeah.
I think about the choke, right?
Yep.
Grabbing his player. That's that's you have to kind of understand. You have to be so aware of the landscape you're living in. Like, yeah, the '70s, you probably got away with that, Bobby Knight, right? And
Yeah.
like to your guy, like a few, couple decades ago, you probably got away with that. You
Mhm.
can't get away with it now, and that's a change for the better because physically abusing players never has worked. It's just it's like you mentioned earlier about coaching being a power thing. That's really what it is. It's reasserting your dominance, which is something that shouldn't be allowed anymore. And I'm glad that we've gotten to a point where we're shaming people for that.
Yes.
Um, let's close out here, man. Talk about some state of Indiana basketball.
Yes.
Um, so I was listening to Rick Carlisle talk with Zach Lowe on his podcast recently. They're kind of talking about the Pacers season, and just as a recap, the Pacers losing seven in the finals to the Thunder. Obviously, that what a weird game seven
Oh,
because the injury to Halliburton because it happened so early was just it's like you're watching a funeral, man, because everybody is just so sad about this. This guy who was a story of the playoffs.
mhm.
That shot in game 1 of the conference finals will live in my memory and haunt me for the rest of my days, you know, and but he had such an incredible run, game
Yep.
winners and taking this team that, nobody thought was really a finals contender, but, with the way he was shooting, I mean, who knows how that game would have turned out,
Mhm.
right? And
Mhm.
OKC, in the last couple rounds of the playoffs where they were shooting it a little bit mediocrely, I would say. They
Mhm.
thrived more on their aggressive defense, which is what, helped deliver them their title. And then you fast forward to the Fever, who, everybody thought their season was done.
Mhm.
Caitlin Clark out for the year, Sophie Cunningham out for the rest of the year.
Mhm.
They take up I believe it's like a hardship contract to get Odyssey Sims, and then you had the Bonner situation as well, that kind of, transpired throughout the year, and he's like, "Alright, this is just a lost season." Right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
here they are, they're a game away from they were a game away from the finals before losing, and I think that people need to give Stephanie White some credit here.
Oh, yeah.
She really, cobbled together that team, and, Kelsey Mitchell, MVP candidate, and
Oh, amazing.
I she so it's so funny because I'll be honest, I've been very critical of the Caitlin Clark fandom that surrounds the Fever. There have been
Mhm,
incidents, there have been conversations that a lot of people have had. But I struggle with it. It's kinda like when it's a team you hate, but you like a certain player,
yeah.
so I love watching Aaliyah Boston play. Kelsey Mitchell is just the explosion is just next level, and she was worth every MVP vote that she got. She was just incredible to see. So every time
Mhm,
I watched a Fever game, yeah, I wasn't locked into every single game, but every time I watched them, she just jumped off the screen, right?
mhm,
And so it's an interesting thing in professional Indiana basketball where you didn't win a title with either of these teams this year. But I was talking to a friend of mine about the Detroit Lions. They're big Lions fans. And
mm,
I was like, a lot of times when we look back at glory eras and stuff, we only think about the teams that won titles.
yeah.
But I think about this from a Knicks perspective. If the next 5 years go in the rest of the Jalen Brunson era and they don't win a title, maybe they get to a conference finals or even get to a finals. And I'm still gonna think fondly of that era the same way I think about the '90s Knicks. They never won the title either, but they got to the finals twice, and a lot of good memories were had for me. And
Mhm.
I think that goes a little underappreciated in this whole ring culture thing. So, walk me through your experience from the Pacers run into the Fever season and the Fever run, just what the vibe is for both Pacers and Fever fans right now.
Yeah, the vibes are, different than they've ever been. Like, there's a level of hope, especially because, that for the Pacers, that 2000 team was, like, a team that certainly not on its last leg, but, like, Reggie had been in the league for, like, 12 years. Rick Smits was quite
And
literally
in
on his
Reggie's
last
era,
leg.
right? Yeah, it was
For
and
sure. For sure, very much so. It was, like, before Jermaine O'Neal even came, so it was, like, a different era, like, the Davis brothers, not literal brothers, but Davis brothers, so it was, like that was kinda like a different thing where, like, when they lost that, and then it was like, and then the next year, they lost to, I think, New Jersey in the first round, and, after that, the Isaiah Thomas years, so it was kinda, like, weird, but now it's like, "Ooh, there's some hope," and, yeah, like, going into the Eastern Conference Finals run against the Celtics that we lost in 4, that was unexpected. Like, I'm sitting there, I'm like, "I hope we make the playoffs," and then we're in the Eastern Conference Finals, I was like, "Whoa, what is happening?" It's like, "Alright, cool." And then going into the next year, nobody people were like, Pacers might be 6 or whatever, and, it's like, "Alright, cool." Like, they were, and or I forget what we were, but, going into the season, nobody thought we were going to finals. We started off the season terribly. We were 10 and
Right.
15. Tyrese was really struggling. I especially know this because I play fantasy basketball with family and friends, and my sister-in-law drafted Tyrese in part because she's like, "Oh, like I know he's your guy," and she was texting me every other night, like, "What's up with your?" She called him Tony. Anytime he had a bad night, she's like, "What's up with your boy Tony?" I'm like, I don't know, man."
I love the Tony thing, by the way. That's hilarious.
Yeah, she was her and, like, my buddy DeMario, because he had him in another league, he's also in
Yeah.
this one. In our group chat, they'd always be like, "Tony!" And, like, I just knew it was coming. So, like, it was terrible to start the season, but then it got a little better, and it got a little better, and it got a little better. And I'm like you, where I'm like, I'm not ring culture. I can't be as a Pacers fan. They never won 'em on my entire life. So, like,
Right.
I'm certainly not like, "I'm here for the rings." I'm here for the culture. And I gotta say, Pacers Sports and Entertainment Group, they've had very consistent ownership and leadership. Herb Simon, my guy, Herb Simon, who I've met a couple times, super cool. I'm obviously very biased, but he's been the owner my entire life. Literally purchased the team for I think it was $30 million in '82 or maybe '83 with his brother, and he's been there the entire time. A lot of leadership has been there the entire time. Like even if you go on LinkedIn, which I like such a nerd. I follow all of them on LinkedIn. Not like I go on LinkedIn much, but like they've all been there. You look at their profiles, like I've been with Pace of Sports and Entertainment for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. Like there's a lot of stability there. And then you look at this particular season and you're like, it's not a fluke. Like even Carlisle, obviously he's back, but like they brought him back to be the steady force. Stephanie White was brought back to be a steady force. Like they're not looking to bring in and out coaches. They did for a while and it wasn't good. And now they're looking for stability. So as a Pacers fan, it's been so much fun. Like this whole run, obviously it's heartbreaking in a lot of ways. But again, I was just thinking about this right before a call. And maybe this is just 'cause of my algorithm, but like I have never seen as much information and just highlights about the team who lost in the NBA finals as I have with the Pacers.
Mm.
I rarely see stuff about the Thunder. Rarely see it. Maybe a commercial here and there with like,
Right.
get your championship gear. And then my daughter's always boo. Anytime I go in there, like, boo the Thunder. And I secretly love it. But man, and then going from that, which was like heartbreaking in a lot of regards, and then into the fever season and then injury after injury. And it's like,
Mm.
here we go again. And then, I'm watching, I had some friends over during game 5 of the finals, and like they arrived right before they go to overtime. I was like, I'm sorry. I didn't anticipate this was going to happen. But now it's like this team has lost Kelsey Mitchell. Aaliyah Boston fouls out. And then Icy Simmons hits, who literally wasn't on the team at the beginning of the year, hits a shot to tie it to go into overtime. And it's like, what is happening? So it's been fun, it's been ups and downs, but with the Fever specifically, what I love about it is, like, obviously a lot of people came on board for Caitlin Clark. A lot of people came on board, and I really enjoy her as a player. I'm not one of these people, like, "I'm a Fever fan, not Caitlin Clark." I am a Caitlin Clark fan. I don't care. Look, I'm not trying to hide this. Like, she's on my team. I think she's fun. She's generational. She's amazing, and it's fun to have that kind of player on my team, especially as somebody nobody cared about the Fever. Nobody cares about the Pacers. So it's fun in a lot of regards, but what I love about it is that the second that she went down, everyone, including Fever fan, kind of wrote off the team. And then here comes Odyssey Sims. People are like, "Who?" Like, here comes Kelsey Mitchell. Your average fan, or maybe below average fan, is like, "Oh, who is that?" Lee Boston, like, "Oh yeah, kind of remember her." And you look at all these different players. They're like, "Oh damn, this is a good team. This is a
Mm.
fun team." And Caitlin Clark's sitting on the bench the entire time. And that's what I love about sports. That's where chemistry matters more than anything. You look at the Pacers roster, you put it in 2K, they don't win the championship. They don't even get to the finals in 2K because
Right.
they don't have the certain level of players that you need in 2K. But life isn't 2K. Life is life, and chemistry matters. Culture matters. And I am incredibly biased here, but I do think Pacer Sports and Entertainment Group, who owns both the Pacers and the Fever, I think they're really trying to build something special because they know how lucky they are to have Tyrese and Caitlin Clark on the team to like kind of lead it. And then they know how lucky they are to have Pascal Siakam and Kelsey Mitchell, to have, Andrew Nemhard and Aaliyah Boston. Like they know that they have incredible, stable groups and they want to be able to build it. Obviously, we lost Miles, which kind of hurts me, but there were,
To the Bucks of all
oh
teams,
my
which
goodness,
is,
Omar, I
very
woke up, I had a red-eye flight to New York, and I
right.
was sleeping, I was napping, I woke up just to, like, check my phone after, like, 2 hours of just terrible night sleep. I
Mm.
checked my phone, saw Myles Turner signs with the Bucks, and I was like, oh my goodness. Oh, broke my heart. I will never get over it, ever.
You know,
I don't know.
my thought on the Miles thing was if Halliburton was healthy, I think they would have tried to keep him. And I think I don't need to tell you this, the Pacers are notorious for not going into the tax. Like they avoid the tax like the plague. And easy for me to say, fan of a big market team that's hovering around the second apron. But it's just kind of like I think that maybe they would have ventured there if Tyrese was back. But you lose Tyrese and you lose Miles now. I find this team we could see a little bit of a masterclass from Carlisle from a coaching perspective.
Yeah, yeah.
Because you're probably gonna be featuring, Siakam a lot more, and I would imagine Mathurin gets a bunch of minutes now, and, and obviously Nemhard is they're gonna trust him to kinda run the ship a bit as a
Mhm,
starting point guard, and, with the state of the East being what it is, I can't help but think that they're gonna be in the mix somewhere, not like last year where, they eventually go on this title run,
mhm,
but the to be able to, you know, be in the playoffs again, and there's a lot of people are just kind of be like, "Oh, it's New York and Cleveland, and that's it, right, in the East,"
yeah.
and as a Knicks fan, I hope that's true, but,
No,
you
yeah,
know,
not fair.
but it's not, let's not act like the Pacers don't still have talent. No, obviously, Tyrese is a huge raiser of that talent, but,
Mhm.
let's not act like they're all of a sudden they're the Charlotte Hornets, and no disrespect, but, you
Yeah.
the
And you saw throughout the playoffs, like Rick Carlisle and like his staff, like they were solely responsible for a couple of those wins. Just like the
for
game
sure,
plans that you brought
for sure.
in, like they were amazing. And then same thing for the Thunder. Like I know game 7, I will go down saying like if Tyrese was healthy, like they don't lose. That being said, he did go down and they did lose. And I'm not like an asterisk type of person. I'm like, that's sports, that's life. Like Thunder played the game that was in front of them. That is exactly what you do if you're the Thunder. That's
Also,
exactly what you do in life. Like you're given cards, you play them. Somebody gives you, full house. Like, oh, this is unfair. It's like you play it. Like that's
like,
how life
here's the
works.
deal, man. With injuries, they happen, and I think it would be a little disingenuous for any Pacers fan to blame it on injury when the past 2 seasons, the Pacers have benefited from the other side of that, right?
Okay, okay. Now this is where no, I'm just kidding.
That is true, right? I mean, you win who's in front of you, but no Lillard,
Literally
right?
every single championship you can go back through every single
Yeah.
time. Raptors in 2019, Lakers in 2020, who was it? Bucks in 21. Like literally every single team. It's a part of the game. It's a part of sports. So like I personally don't focus on it, but like, I've watched almost every single game that Tyrese has played for the Pacers. And I think the most frustrating thing about him in general is like sometimes Pacers fans are like, bro, do you realize how good you are? Like, can you shoot a little bit more? Like you're 40% 3-point shooter.
That has always been my criticism of him, where
Mhm,
it's kinda like the talent is just so glaring, but there are games he just gets passive for whatever
mhm,
reason. I don't know why.
mhm.
It just
Nobody
I
does.
know he's kind of a flow of the game player. He's
Yeah.
not a traditional or a modern archetyped, "I'm a score at all costs" type player,
Mhm,
which, he's not, like that's a Kyrie Irving, right? Where he's gonna get his buckets and initiate it and force it or whatever, and he's gonna, trust the pass is what he does all the time, and that's a Carlisle thing, right?
for sure.
Where yeah, and that does frustrate. I was like, man, this guy's like the shot making is there, the driving ability is there, and some games just disappeared, and I was like, I was like, that's just kind
Mhm,
of wild to me.
mhm,
It should be interesting. One thing to kind of touch on the synergy between the Fever and the Pacers. One thing I love is that Tyrese and the other guys on the team, they go to Fever games.
mhm,
Caitlin Clark has been to Pacer games.
mhm,
There's a synergy there. I don't think a lot of other NBA teams that share cities. You saw it a little bit when the Timberwolves unveiled their new jerseys, or their throwback tree jerseys, and they kind of gave one to Nafisa Collier,
mhm,
and so there's some of that there, but I do feel like the Pacers and Fever, more than others, have a little bit more of a interconnection with one another, and, part of that is being under the same umbrella and playing in the same arena
mhm.
and all that. Obviously, I don't expect the Liberty and the Knicks to be on that same page because the Liberty play in Brooklyn. They don't play that much cheap
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I know. I know.
uh
Yeah, even I think there's a lot of crossover in terms of like people who are working like on like the PR side, the
yeah.
digital side, marketing side, like Pat Boylan, who's like the what not the play-by-play radio guy for the Pacers, but he does like the game for
Mhm.
Fever, but then he also works for the Pacers. He works for
Right.
Pacers Sports and Entertainment. Where so, like, to have people who are, like, very involved in both of that is great, but I love seeing all the players. I love seeing Obi and his daughter at the Fever games. I love seeing, Caitlin Clark, Kelsey Mitchell, Aaliyah Boston at Pacers games. Like, it just kind of brings, like, the city and the state and it's funny I say that as somebody who lives in California, but, like,
Yeah.
I'm always from a distance. I'm like, "Yeah, go Indiana." Like, I love seeing them all together. And honestly, like, I don't know. I think that leads to some of the chemistry. I think that leads to some of the camaraderie. Like, the Pacers can go into training camp right now and look at like the way that the Fever players played their hearts out, and they can take that quite literally because they know them, they practice in the same arena, they're practically colleagues, and they can take the same energy and bring it into this season and say, yeah, we're without our guy, we're without Tyrese, nobody expects anything of us, but we are incredible basketball players, and we are going to get out there and get it done. So I don't know.
One, criticism for the Fever, when they whip out their Stranger Things jerseys, I've talked on about this on Threads with Noelle Maxwell a lot, who,
Yes, yeah,
yeah,
she was not a fan of him.
yeah.
Not a fan.
If you're gonna do it, man, commit 100% and change the court too,
Just
because,
okay, I can get down with that.
like, listen, there's a lot of ways they have all these, like, social campaigns. You're trying to tell me you can't have a Stranger Things inspired court?
Mhm,
'Cause it's like when it has, like, the regular Fever logo with, like, the gray court that they got going on there at Gamebridge,
mhm,
for the Fever games, with the Stranger Things jersey, it doesn't look right, man. Like,
mhm,
change it
mhm.
up. If you're gonna commit to the bit, fully commit to the bit, right? And
Man.
that's all I wanna say. Like, I don't mind the jerseys. I actually don't like,
Oh, I
I
love
appreciate
them.
I appreciate Noelle's perspective, about why she doesn't like them,
Yeah.
and I get where she's coming from. I don't mind them personally, but,
Yeah.
there is, like, something said about how it feels like, like the team is sponsored by Netflix all of a sudden just to hype up the last season of Stranger Things. I understand that perspective. But I have, like, final prediction for you for the Pacers. I think the Fever, we probably assume that they'll be in the mix in the playoffs next year once Caitlin
Yeah.
is back and kind of rehabs her injury, and you get Sophie Cunningham back, and you have another year of development with, Stephanie White and Aaliyah Boston and all them and Kelsey Mitchell.
Mhm.
But the Pacers are a little bit of an unknown. I guess, where do you expect them to end up in the year next year? Do you think they'll be in the top half of the East or maybe closer to play-in? Like, what do you think for their outlook moving forward?
Yeah. I fully expect them to be in the playoffs run. I fully would expect top 6 in the playoffs, to avoid a play-in, and not just because, like, the East is, kind of, COVID
People say it's
dues, things
weak.
like that.
People say it's weak. Atlanta's
Yes.
gotten better. Orlando's
Yes.
gotten better. The Knicks have a new coach. Cleveland's still very strong. So that's 4 teams right there. Now you
Yeah.
could argue 5 and 6 is probably where you would probably want to select what's Boston gonna be? What's Miami gonna be? I People could hate on me and maybe clip this later and rub it in my face. I think the Wizards are gonna be a playing team this year, like at the 10th
Yeah,
spot.
okay. Alright.
I like their talent a lot. I like Sarr, I like Koulibaly. I like a lot of these guys, and they got rid of Jordan Poole, thank God. And so, it just didn't work, man. That wasn't great. Bob
Yeah.
Carrington, he's a nice player with them. I think they'll be in the play-in mix towards the bottom, obviously. I don't think they're gonna be a 7th seed. But
Yeah.
but yeah, I think the Pacers in that 5-6 range and maybe even reaching into the 4, depending on how the shooting goes for Orlando. I
Yeah.
think that they could be in the mix, and I don't know, but
They could. Carlisle is incredibly adaptable. He's very good at looking what he has and saying like, "All right, cool." Similar to Stephanie White. Stephanie White was just like, "All right, like I'm missing 80% of my team, and we have a bunch of like hardship players. Cool, let's roll with it, and like
yeah,
let's go to their strengths." And she did it. Carlisle's the same way. So I don't know. Like I look at Pascal Siakam, who's an incredible leader. I don't know if you've seen any of his content over the offseason, but like the man is putting like his production team around him is insane. Um, Andrew Nemhard's always been kind of like a quiet killer. He's doing a little more on social media, which is interesting because I've never seen him as that type of person. Benedict Mathurin, I'm curious to see. I've been a huge Benedict Mathurin fan since the day that we drafted him. So I've got all the hope in the world in him. And I'm kind of tired of Pacers fans talking about like, well, it's fit with the team. It's like the dude's incredible. Just let the man play. Like
bucket
I'm
getter, man. He's a bucket getter.
yes. He scores baskets in NBA games. He scored 27 points in a finals game. I'm just so over people talking about like, well, does he fit this team? Make him fit the team or make the team fit him. Like, he's an incredible basketball player. What are we even talking about? Like,
The
maybe
the issue he has, to me, a little over aggressive on defense sometimes, picks up a lot of fouls, and then
it,
I think he needs to work on that. But and
no doubt about it. No doubt about it. Like, there's definitely defensive
he's
and
still
so
young.
like
Yeah, he's
oh
young.
my god.
He's
Yeah, he's
young.
like 22. Like,
Mhm.
let the man live. Again, so anyway, but yeah, so to get to your point, like I think playoffs for sure. I'd be disappointed. I remember when we were 7th in the Wembanyama draft or 6th or 7th or whatever we were. I remember tweeting afterwards. I was like, I never want the Pacers to be in the lottery again. I don't care who's coming. I don't care what the prospect is. I'm never gonna be like tank for this person. It's
Right.
so stressful to be to sit there. And I was like praying. I remember going to Instagram stories. I'm like, friends, pray not really, but like pray that we get the #1 pick. Wembanyama's coming. Oh my, him and Tyrese would be insane, which it would be insane.
It would be.
And then yes, and then we got the 7th pick and drafted Jarris Walker, who I love Jarris Walker, but I'm like, for a year, I've been like, oh, I hope we, don't do as well, or you're kind of rooting against games. And I'm like, what for the 7th pick in the draft? Like
Yeah,
this
yeah.
sucks. I know teams like the Pistons they have like the worst, and they end up with the 5th pick and all these different things. So like,
Well,
yeah, so
the
playoffs,
Pacers
playoffs.
never won
Great.
the lottery, right? Yeah.
Literally never. And it's funny because earlier you mentioned that we've had a rivalry since the 90s. I'd even go back to the 80s when the maybe cold, maybe frozen envelope where the Knicks got the #1 pick and had drafted Patrick Ewing and the Pacers got the #2 pick. I think that's what started the rivalry.
Hmm.
But
That's when they got Rick Smith, right? Wasn't that the Rick Smith draft? Wasn't he picked second, or was that somebody else? I'm trying to remember.
I thought it was LaSalle Thompson. If
It
I
might have been. It might have been.
yeah, I think Rick
But that's a
Smith.
deep cut name right there, man. Next thing you
Yeah.
start talking about Haywood Workman. Uh,
I honestly, yeah, I might be totally wrong on that, but I'm gonna, yeah. Anyway,
I'm not sure, but yeah, I don't know, man. Like that conspiracy theory, I guess. I mean, I don't know. It's like, it's whatever, it's fine. Like there's a lot of arguments for, a lot of arguments against it. They're
Yeah.
in various, like the CP3 trade is another like NBA conspiracy theory that a lot of people like to bring up. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's like when people say, "Oh, the NBA is rigging the lottery," like the pro in that argument is like giving New York Patrick Ewing, but giving New Orleans Zion Williamson and Anthony Davis, one of the worst NBA markets,
I know.
if not the
I
worst
know.
NBA market. Like, I think
Mhm.
that so you talk about the lottery thing, that was me in 2019 in the Zion draft. 'Cause
Oh, yes, because you got the 3rd pick, right?
yeah, we cleared out the deck. We were gonna go in on for we are gonna sign KD and Kyrie and all this, and we were gonna draft Zion by getting the number 1 pick by being the worst team in the league.
Mhm.
And we end up with the 3 pick and end up with RJ Barrett. We don't get KD or Kyrie. We end up with Julius Randle instead. And yeah, it worked out. It's fine, but yeah, I'm excited to
Yeah.
see how the Pacers do this year. I
Let's see.
think
It wa
they're
By the way, it was Wayman Tisdale. I had to look this up because I was like, as I said, I was like, I don't think it was LaSalle Thompson. It was Wayman Tisdale that we got with the 2nd pick where the
mm,
Knicks got Patrick Ewing. So
yeah, yeah,
anyway, there's
yeah.
that. I had to fact check myself on your podcast.
There you go. Appreciate that, appreciate it. Yeah, okay, it wasn't
Sure.
entirely fair because obviously, Knicks fans remember the number 1 pick and don't care about the rest of the draft. So
Yeah.
but,
Fair enough.
Ryan, I've taken way too much of your time here. Can you just let everybody know where they can follow your coaching journey and, see what you're up to, in regards to that?
Yeah, yeah, courtsidecoaching.com is, like it's kind of like the place to find me on Instagram, Threads, Ryan Rucker. That's, where it's kind of like a catch-all for everything. I'm sure some people find me for, like my coaching and they're like, "Oh, he's posting about his children's book he wrote a year ago." And then people follow me for children's book and they're like, "He's talking about his podcast." And then other people are like, "He's talking about squirrels." So I'm all over the place. But yeah, Ryan Rucker on Threads is definitely like my day-to-day go to Ryan Rucker on Instagram. But yeah, let's,
We need more of that squirrel content, so,
hey man, I'm all over the place. I got this one of my neighbors has like this squirrel cafe and it's like on like this like really cool walkway. And so like I'll post pictures that are like, "Oh, we need more squirrel content." I'm like, "I got you." So
awesome.
I'll bring it to Threads.
There you go. Everybody make sure to give Ryan a follow. Check out his website, and it's great stuff. I promise you will not regret it. If you enjoyed this podcast, you could catch us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube as well. You could catch clips of this podcast on YouTube Shorts and Instagram Reels as well. Brian, thanks again for joining me. And as always, thank you to listening for another edition of the Deep Cover Podcast. I'm your host, Omar Saran, and we'll see you next time.
Take care.